Following our Super Bowl 62 victory, the Denver Broncos get set for the offseason as we get ready for year number 5 and look to defend our title. Today we're going to get through the entire offseason, including free agency and the upcoming NFL draft. It has been a whirlwind season 4, and I think this team, compared to some of the other teams we've seen in past series, really faced off against more adversity, especially this season. A team who lost 3 of their last 5 regular season games, including a matchup to an undrafted rookie quarterback. But we prevailed in the playoffs with a gritty win against the Bengals, a comfortable win over the Raiders, a shootout against the Chiefs, and a thriller in the Super Bowl against Seattle to win 28-21. A game that we rarely led. I think we had the lead for 10 seconds, but it was the final 10 seconds. This team knows when to make the big plays in the big moments in the second half. The Chiefs game as well, we only led for around a minute and a half, but it was the final minute and a half of the game. Certainly a roller coaster performance for Bo Nix, who got injured on the first offensive play of the game, and he was not very good in the first half, but he really rebounded nicely. Avery Johnson was solid for Seattle, while Kenneth Walker was excellent. I think the great thing about our team is we're not led by star power. Rather, it's a collective effort. And that was the case today with probably 6 different players you could have argued for the Super Bowl MVP. Bo Nix is in the discussion. Marvin Mims for sure, 11 for 145 and a touchdown. Chris Brazzell was excellent. He made some big plays in the fourth, including that super long touchdown with just a few minutes to go. And then defensively, was not perfect, but over the final 3 drives of the game, Seattle scored 0 points. Mykel Williams was the anchor up front, including the sack to seal the game in the final seconds. Patrick Surtain had 2 interceptions, including a pick 6 in the first quarter, and with his impressive coverage on DK Metcalf throughout the game, his presence was certainly felt throughout. Benjamin Morrison didn't put up the big numbers, but I think he deserves his name to be thrown into the Super Bowl MVP mix. Jackson Smith-Njigba did not catch a pass outside of the first minute of the game. Ultimately, EA decided to give it to Surtain. It's hard to argue with that. I personally would have gone with Marvin Mims. I feel like he was exceptional throughout the game. He had the biggest play of the game where he mossed Dalen Everett inside the 10-yard line to put us in position to kick the game-winning field goal. Surtain was awesome, though. He was the only reason why we were in the game in the first half to begin with, thanks to the 2 interceptions. So it's hard to complain with him winning the Super Bowl MVP because he was also absolutely fantastic. I think the fun thing about going into this offseason is that we are going to be able to bring back pretty much everybody. Only one starter on offense or defense is up for an extension, that being Drew Sanders, who played on the franchise tag last year. Now, we still have to be smart with our money, though, because we've got a lot of guys to pay over the next couple of years, and as I've been saying for a while, I think next season is really the last in the Super Bowl window of this specific group. We're going to have to make a decision on Bo Nix, who's going to be on the $43 million 5th-year option, and assuming we do extend him, paying a quarterback big money certainly handcuffs you. We don't have any major long-term contracts on the books, though. After 2030, no deals are currently on. So after the 2030 season, we have $0 being floated into this roster. So we have the long-term flexibility to bring back the guys we need, but we've got a lot of guys who we're going to have to pay. Everybody within the next 3 years is a free agent. So we're going to want to bring back as much of this core as possible while being smart and selective with who we end up paying as we go into a press conference. Let's talk about the next few months going into the offseason. What is your plan? Well, as I've been saying, I think we're going to run it back. Apparently that's not an option, though. I guess there's no specific plan. What do you mean there's no plan at all? Well, I like the talent. Everybody's under contract, so it's pretty simple. So you're saying this roster is good enough to be a playoff team? I would hope so. We just won the goddamn Super Bowl. Are these media people stupid? What are we doing? Why are you questioning us? We just built a championship roster. I think we know what we're doing. Let's look at the list of retirements. We're not going to have anybody here because we don't have anybody who's that old. But amongst the notable names, we've got the former Bronco Justin Simmons, Tre'Davious White, Kyle Juszczyk, Grady Jarrett, Joe Thuney, Chris Jones retires, a big loss for the Chiefs. They've drafted extremely well on the defensive line, so I think they'll be okay. But at his peak, he was, in my opinion, the best defensive player in the league. Amari Cooper is here. Mike Williams, Cameron Hayward, who was with our team last year. Kirko Chains is done, and that wraps up the list of retirements. We're going to be talking some draft as well. Mock draft number 4 is out. I am going to have to make some changes to the draft, though, with guys whose draft stocks have gone up and down, players who have recently entered the draft, players who have exited the draft and will be returning for their senior seasons, and that's where we're going to start. In terms of the players who are no longer in the class, Jay Pitts is going back to school along with Isaac Wilson and Tyler Cherry. All 3 of these guys looking to capitalize on next year's QB class being worse. Pitts, obviously the biggest name of that group. Rajai Mosby, Kaysen Stokes, and Josiah Brown at wide receiver will also be returning to school, along with Jaden Reddle, who was the top projected tight end. I think he should have stayed. Illinois linebacker Jaleel Brommel is headed back to school, and then the biggest surprise is the college football playoff MVP, Jalen Mbakwe, who doesn't have much else to prove as someone who would have been a lock for the first round, but his reasoning is that he wants to go back to Alabama and become one of the all-time greats, not just at Alabama, but one of the greatest defensive players in the history of college football. And to that, I say, that's pretty dope. I hope he pulls it off, but he's not off to a great start. Alabama's 0-1. They just lost to Maryland, and Mbakwe individually did not play very well. As for the new faces, quarterback from Virginia Tech, Tavi Belfort, a decision that I don't really understand in his perspective, with next year's QB class likely to be worse. Belfort has improved in each of his 3 seasons as a starter at Virginia Tech, but I think his lack of size and physicals will likely limit him to being a backup in the NFL. Running back David Eziomome, who ran for 1,000 yards as a freshman at Clemson and was on a fast track to being a first or second round pick, but he has not recaptured the magic over the last 2 years. Despite that, with his prior pedigree and his overall upside, he could still go in the top 100. Tank Hawkins from Florida, a dynamic weapon with the ball in his hands. 33 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons. If he was not super small, I think you're looking at a top 20 pick. Johnny Cockrell, guard from Florida State, an established starter over the last 2 seasons with the Noles. He's one of the youngest players in this class. A 21-year-old redshirt sophomore looking to go in the top 100. Linebacker Sammy Brown. He's a fascinating player who had a very good redshirt sophomore season last year. I think he could have been a first or second round pick had he entered. Decides to return to school, even though he got injured at the end of last season. Did not play this year, and then declares for the draft now. I don't really know why he did now. I feel like he cost himself a lot of money. Whoever takes a chance on him, though, in the 4th round could be getting a really good player. His combination of size, coverage instincts, and athleticism is what you look for at the linebacker position in the 1st to 2nd round. Christian Peterson from UCF, a little bit undersized, very good zone corner, though, another guy who's probably right on the fringe at the top 100. And then the highest projected new addition is South Alabama safety Amarion Fortenberry, the redshirt junior, a 1-year starter. He was not on anybody's radar going into last season, but he had a fantastic season with the Jaguars, is an ascending young player who looked the part of a first-rounder last year despite playing a lower level of competition. Andy Underclassman, who we've talked about in this draft previously, who was not just mentioned, will be staying in the draft. That includes guys like Sam Onatulu and Connor Lipneski. Obviously, those 2 guys, for instance, are going to stay in the draft, given that both of them are probably going to go in the top 3. That, of course, will be a little bit later, though. We will start, though, with free agency and, of course, the re-sign period as we look to figure out the one starter who we're going to have to bring back. We have $76 million, roughly, one of the highest totals in the NFL, and a great opportunity to potentially splurge and really add to this roster. But that would not be smart because we've got a lot of guys due for extensions in the next year or so, including Ashton Jeanty, whose agent is telling him that his number 1 motivation should be more meaningful. Not paying income tax. Really? Really? I want your motivation to be staying on the friggin' field. He's missed basically a full season's worth of games since we drafted him. So I guess I'm going to say the motivation should be being the starter because he was outplayed by Travion Henderson, who, unlike Jeanty, stayed healthy last year. I think we should be worrying about that before we worry about our income tax. Maybe he cares so much because of the tariffs. Anyway, 5th-year option, Mykel Williams. It's been an up and down start to his career. Was not good early as a rookie, but then flashed dominance down the stretch. Was pretty bad and pretty unhealthy last year. And then this year was certainly his best, including 6 sacks in the playoffs. Now, he had a couple of games where he was non-existent. No show against the Raiders and the Chiefs. But at his best, he has shown to be a game wrecker. Dominated in the Super Bowl against Seattle. Dominated against Cincinnati. If Mykel Williams can become more consistent, he could be one of the best defensive linemen in the NFL. So this is a no-brainer. We're going to give him the 5th-year option and push his extension back by a year. As for Drew Sanders, the only starter on either offense or defense due for an extension. And it's an interesting discussion with Sanders because, for one thing, we tried to re-sign him last year. We couldn't come to an agreement. He played on the franchise tag. And I think he certainly has earned the opportunity to get a long-term deal given how well he played this year. Now, paying an off-ball linebacker big money is not a great team-building philosophy. It's definitely not a great idea to pay 2. And Jeffrey Bossa is one of the many guys who are due for extensions after next year. As I said earlier, we're going to have to make some tough decisions. We're going to have to let some guys go who we don't want to give long-term extensions to. We have to be very strategic and selective in terms of the guys who we are paying. And giving 2 off-ball linebackers big money is not necessarily the way to go. However, I think Drew Sanders is far too good of a player to have leave in free agency. He just led the NFL in tackles with, ironically, Jeffrey Bossa in second place. This duo is what makes our defense work. Particularly Sanders, who I thought was better than Bossa this year, and in my opinion was the best player on our defense this season. I think he was better than Nick Bonito, Mykel Williams, Patrick Surtain, Colin Wright, Marvin Grant, Jeffrey Bossa. Drew Sanders was better than all of them. And I think him and Bossa in the middle of that defense is what makes this group go. The secondary's been up and down, the pass rush has been up and down, but those guys in the middle are so consistent, are so good. They play like all pros. Drew Sanders is not a guy who we can afford to let go. 5 years, $55 million is the offer, and Drew Sanders says yes. He will not be playing on the franchise tag again. We agreed to a long-term deal. So finally, we're paying somebody outside of the next 3 years. Sanders will be under contract until his age 31 season, and for me, it was a very easy decision. Not paying, in my opinion, our best defensive player from last year would be malpractice. We're going to look to bring back our special teamers. Will Lutz made the game-winning kick in the Super Bowl. He cannot go anywhere. Him and Jake Camarda will both return, which means all of our starters on offense, defense, and now special teams are under contract for next season. So we can officially put it into motion that we are running it back. We are going to lose some depth players, however. Chris Abrams drain amongst them. Going into the year, I thought this would be a tougher decision, being that he's been our starting slot corner for quite a while now, and I felt like he was pretty good early on in his career, but he was not very good this season. We benched him halfway through for Benjamin Morrison, who played very well down the stretch. I'll give Abrams Drain a lot of credit. He handled it like a pro, and he was awesome on special teams, but you can see the difference in terms of downs played. He did not play very many defensive snaps in the second half of the year, so it doesn't make sense for us to pay him. B.J. Ojulari as well, the price tag is just too big for a guy who I feel like the idea of B.J. Ojulari is better than the player of Ojulari. He only had 1 sack this year. Granted, he did have a strip sack against the Raiders in the playoffs. He didn't play in the Super Bowl, though. He was injured. I think 4 years, $34 million is just too much. We've got this group of depth guys with Christian Horn, Harrison Whaley, Savion Williams. They'll all probably find their way back on our team as they seemingly do every year. And then everybody else we are going to let go. Camarda said no. I thought he said yes. I'm stupid. That's my bad. We'll try to re-sign him at some point in free agency. Although I thought he said yes the whole time. I'm literally just realizing right now that he said no. So through free agency, I never tried to pay him. I just assumed we had our punter. All right, going into free agency, we have picks 32, 64, a 4th, and 2 6s. So not a lot of picks. We do have a lot of money, though, $63.1 million. We're second in cap space behind only, ironically, the New Orleans Saints. Terrion Arnold headlines the free agency class. That's a big one. 25 years old, superstar development, 92 overall. Quinyon Mitchell joins him. Laramie Tunsil is here. We just saw Chris Abrams drain. Dak Prescott. Interesting. The Cowboys are letting him go. That's a surprise. So let's look at these corners. Arnold in particular, the biggest name here. We have the money to pay for him, and what an addition that would be for us. Detroit was unable to re-sign him, being that they are paying Jared Goff $81 million. That is so much money. You guys know how I feel about Jared Goff. I think he might be the most disrespected player in the league. But $81 million for probably a backup next year, that is alarming. So that's how he ends up leaving the Lions. In terms of us, I would love to pay him. I love me some Terrion Arnold. A ball-hawking machine. He forced 9 turnovers his second year and has gotten better and better in coverage. He's one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. That type of player does not hit the open market at 25 years old. But we also have so many guys to pay next year. We cannot be irresponsible with our money. It's not like we really need a corner. Surtain and Wright on the outside, Benjamin Morrison in the slot. So as much as I would love to do this, we've got other guys to pay. We can't do it. We are going to try to clear up some money, though. Not that we really need to, but I kind of think it makes sense to move off of Quinn Miners anyway, who's entering the last year of his deal. He never really has lived up to the big contract we gave him at the start of this series, although I do think he's coming off his best season. Granted, he missed 5 regular season games and a playoff game. I think the Browns and the Ravens would be the 2 teams most interested. I don't love trading him to another AFC contender, but given that Baltimore's going for a Super Bowl right now and Cleveland is not, I think the Ravens make the most sense as a trade destination. So we're going to get a 4th and a 7th back from Baltimore. We're going to get younger on the offensive line. Quinn Miners has never played up to the level that I felt like he's capable of, and this clears the way for other guys to play. Tree Babalade, who we drafted in the first round last year, will play right tackle, while Francis Mauigoa will kick inside to guard. So we're not going to have to sign Miners' replacement in free agency. We already have it on the roster. We are going to look to make one addition, though, in free agency. I want to add another DB. Not a corner, though, so no Terrion Arnold or Quinyon Mitchell, but I think a safety. Cole Bishop and Jaden Hicks are the top 2 guys here. I would prefer Bishop because he's more of a traditional coverage free safety. Missed some games last year, but has been a 4-year starter with the Bills, has paired nicely with Malachi Starks in their back end. I don't want to give him a long-term deal, though, because we've got a lot of guys to pay. 1 year, $13 million. My thought is maybe giving him more money for the 1 year, and then he'll be able to hit the market again at 26 and eventually cash out. I had the same idea for Jaden Hicks, although I don't think he would be as good of a get as Bishop. In and out of the lineup for the Chiefs, he was replaced this year by the rookie Dalton Brooks, who was a little bit better than they expected early on. 1 year, $11 million will be the offer, and again, he'll have an opportunity to cash out next year at 27 years old. Hicks says yes, as I expected. Bishop says no. I thought he was going to go to the Dolphins. Instead, he's going to a different AFC West team. He ends up with the Las Vegas Raiders. Otherwise, I don't really think we're going to spend much else. I did think about Connor Harrell, though, the undrafted rookie at the Jets, who is sitting here in free agency. I'm not really sure who should sign him, but someone should take a chance on him. With Jalen Milroe out, he did a really good job. I thought he played very well against us in Week 15. His lowest QB rating of his final 4 games. And then Jalen Milroe came back, and he didn't play after that. But I think there's a lot of upside with him. I just don't know if it's all that realistic for us to be the team to do it. Otherwise, no changes for free agency. We're not going to go after anybody else other than Jaden Hicks. So before we take a look at the free agency recap, I do want to mention that the draft class is available on the draft class share. Type in my PSN. You'll be able to download any of the draft classes of the series. I know there's 3 for year number 1, but remember we had all those glitches. Luckily, the last 3 draft classes, to my knowledge, do not have those types of issues. Let's talk about free agency across the rest of the NFL. There was one team in particular who spent a lot of money, and it happened to be a team in our division who is contending for a Super Bowl. The Las Vegas Raiders know that their window to win a title is right now. This is Jalen Daniels' 4th season. This will be the last year where he is cheap. So because of that, it's time to spend a little bit of money. As much as I would have loved to go after some of the big fish in free agency, I knew we had to be a little bit more responsible. The Raiders decided to be a little bit more reckless with their money. Terrion Arnold is going to Las Vegas. A huge get for the Raiders, the best player in the free agency pool, only 25 years old, entering the prime of his career as probably one of the 2 or 3 best corners in the NFL, now in our division against us twice a year. The Raiders really struggled against the pass in the 3 matchups we saw them last year, so they're going to say no more by adding Arnold, along with Cole Bishop, who they signed as well. Quinyon Mitchell goes to the Bears. Their secondary looks quite strong. Vita Vea to the Raiders, another big get for them defensively. Chris Abrams-Drain ends up with a 3-year deal going to the Los Angeles Rams. Dak Prescott is a Cleveland Brown. That is really interesting. First of all, why would Dak do that to himself? I don't know. But that's fascinating. So what does that mean potentially for Cade Klubnik, who's already on the roster? What does that mean for the number 1 pick? Well, this tells me that the Browns are moving on from Cade Klubnik. They're signing Dak as their veteran, and they are going to look to draft somebody at number 1 and develop him. Normally, I would be for this. I would be for the idea of a bad team hitting the reset button with a really good quarterback prospect on the board at number 1, whether it's Sam Onatulu or Eli Holstein. I would be all in favor of them replacing the lame duck quarterback on their roster and making the switch sooner than later. This, however, is an exception because I don't think Cade Klubnik has been the problem. I think he's gotten better over his 2 years in Cleveland. I really don't think he was that bad last year. He's not the reason why they lost 15 games. There's 2 teams that make a lot of sense for him. Washington and New England. They pick at 3 and 4 in this draft, and with Cleveland picking a quarterback at number 1 and the Rams probably picking a quarterback at number 2, Washington and New England will miss out. So New England is going to cough up the assets. A 2nd and a 4th will get the job done. Drake May has really not developed into the player they had hoped for. He's coming off arguably the worst season of his career. In his 4 years as a starter, New England has finished with a top 5 pick 3 times, including this year. So they're going to take a shot on Klubnik, who statistically last year was better than Drake May probably ever has been. He's been in a horrible situation in Cleveland where he has been thrown in there to die. I think he will be a good quarterback at the next level. I think Cleveland ruined him. And I think the Browns' thought is they're going to sign Dak Prescott to be the starter, draft somebody at number 1, and not rush them like they did with Cade Klubnik 2 years ago. Samaj Morgan to the Falcons, that's an interesting one. BJ Ojolari goes to the Bucks. I'm pretty sure in the Dragon series last year, after we let him go, he also signed with Tampa Bay, ironically enough. Let's take a look at this last mock draft, although keep in mind, I'm pretty sure this would have happened before the Cade Klubnik trade. They have Connor Lutneski at number 1. I think that's what the Browns should have done. I think they should have rolled with Cade Klubnik, not sign Dak, and pick Lutneski with the top spot. Caden Jones at number 2 to the Rams. I do not think that is going to happen. I think they are going to pick a quarterback. No QBs in the first round is blasphemous. I don't know what EA is thinking with that. We're going to have a quarterback at number 1. We're going to have one at number 2. We're probably going to have a few others in the first round as well because that's how it goes. Teams are desperate for a QB. So let's get this show on the road. The 2028 NFL Draft is now officially open. Cleveland Browns on the clock. Which quarterback will they select at number 1? Will it be Sam Onatulu, the dynamic youngster from USC, or will it be the Heisman Trophy winning national champion, Eli Holstein? Hard to see them going wrong in either direction. They had a similar decision 2 years ago with Cade Klubnik or Avery Johnson. They picked Klubnik, and obviously that didn't really work out. Cade Klubnik was just traded away, while Avery Johnson just played in the Super Bowl. So let's see what the decision is here for Cleveland. With the first pick, the Cleveland Browns select Sam Onatulu, quarterback out of the University of Southern California. The 21-year-old lefty who has dominated for the Trojans over the last 2 years will look to be the savior for the Browns. We've gone through 4 drafts now in this series. This is the 3rd time the Browns have drafted a quarterback in the first round. They picked Cam Ward in year 1. They picked Cade Klubnik in year 2. Neither worked out. We'll see if Sam Onatulu can break the trend, and unlike those guys, he's not going to be rushed in. He will be the backup for Dak Prescott. I think him not being the starter when he originally went to USC really helped out his development. Then as a redshirt freshman, he looked unbelievable. Those first couple of games he played, it did not take long for us to realize he was special. And sure enough, he goes number 1. With the second pick, the Los Angeles Rams select Eli Holstein, quarterback out of the University of Alabama. A little bit less suspenseful than the first pick. We knew the Rams would pick one of the two quarterbacks, whichever one ultimately fell, and it ends up being the Heisman Trophy winner and national champion Eli Holstein, who's rated a little bit higher off the bat compared to Sam Onatulu. He had a very Joe Burrow-like ascension. He was probably our 3rd or 4th round pick going into the year, played at a few different schools, but then he broke college football, leading the best team we have seen in this series in Alabama to a national title. With the 3rd pick, the New England Patriots select Connor Letneski, edge rusher out of Iowa. Not a surprise, he's the first non-quarterback off the board. Wasn't really a household name going into the year, and then he records 21 sacks. He was not a top 1,000 player in his high school class just 3 years ago. Now he's the 3rd overall pick. The only defensive player who's made an impact like him at the collegiate level in this series is Jordan Birch, who of course plays for New England and was in the top 3 in the NFL in sacks last year. Those two guys are now on the same team. With the 4th pick, the Washington Commanders select Perry Thompson, wide receiver out of Auburn. Jaden Daniels is entering year 5, and this kind of feels like the last hurrah. Washington has consistently been picking at the top of the draft, and they hope adding a big-time target like Perry Thompson can change that. Well, considering he is an 86 overall, I feel pretty confident that he will be a huge addition to this offense. He's fast, he can get open, he can catch the football, a phenomenal receiver prospect, but he only has normal development. Atlanta's the first team on the board who does not need a quarterback. It was a down year for the Falcons, but they've been consistently good with Michael Penix throughout this series. With the 5th pick, the Atlanta Falcons select Dekias Brinkley, edge rusher out of the University of Kansas. Rock chalk, Brinkley goes in the top 5. He is an Atlanta Falcon. Brinkley was half a sack away from the all-time NCAA record in a career finishing with 44. He, of course, had some phenomenal stretches of play, particularly this year in the playoff, where he had 7 sacks in 3 games. 81 overall, hit in development, a little bit undersized, but you look at the production since his true freshman year to now, he has been one of the most decorated pass rushers in the history of college football and has certainly earned a spot in the top 5. A division rival now on the board, it is the Chargers, who kind of seem poised for the bottom of the division with us, the Chiefs, and the Raiders all looking very strong for the future. With the 6th pick, the Los Angeles Chargers select Nitro Tuggle, wide receiver out of the University of Georgia. The 2nd receiver is off the board. The Chargers have really focused on building this receiving core throughout this series, and adding an alpha such as Nitro Tuggle will give them the leap that they need. 81 overall, but he as well only has normal development. I would certainly say his game is fast, electric, living up to his name on and off the field. Yes, he does have a driving-related arrest. With the 7th pick, the San Francisco 49ers select Armando Blunt, defensive lineman out of the University of Miami. Big, physical, good against the run, impressive at his size as a pass rusher. He will join a crowded but talented defensive line room in San Francisco. A lot of normal devs up high in this class. Where are all the hiddens at? That'll bring up the Texans with the 8th pick in the 2028 NFL Draft. The Houston Texans select Caden Jones, offensive tackle out of the University of Florida. So our first offensive lineman is off the board. Jones is a mammoth of a human being, 6'8", 335, has right and left tackle flexibility, and in my opinion is the best pure pass protector in this class. Laramie Tunsil leaves in free agency. Here's your replacement. A really good selection here for the Texans. I think he's going to be one of the best players selected in the top 10. That'll bring up the New Orleans Saints. This could be a sneaky QB team. Carson Beck is okay entering the last year of his deal. I don't know if they want to extend him. With the 9th pick, the New Orleans Saints select DJ Lagway, quarterback out of the University of Florida. Back-to-back Gators in the top 10. New Orleans does pull the trigger on a quarterback. Lagway has all the physicals you look for at the position, and I can see why the Saints really like him. Much like Cleveland, they don't have to rush him in there, given that they have Carson Beck already starting. Lagway comes in as a 75 overall, only normal development, but I still believe in the combination of rushing ability, arm talent, and accuracy that Lagway brings to the table. It's a shame we only got to see him in one college football playoff game. I really feel like he could have made some more noise. The Browns on the board again. They got this pick last year from the Dolphins in the Dylan Raiola trade up. With the 10th pick, the Cleveland Browns select Kevin Strickland Jr., offensive tackle out of the Ohio State University, staying in the Buckeye State. Cleveland knows they need to get protection for their new golden goose in Sam Onatulu. And if he's the guy who's going to break the streak of failure for Cleveland quarterbacks, they need these offensive linemen to be a hit. Strickland is only a 73 overall, so that's a little disappointing, but he does have hitted development. We'll move a little quicker now that we're outside of the top 10, and for the purpose of getting through this episode quicker, we will breeze through a lot of these picks. Marion Miller, wide receiver, Colorado to the Cardinals. I did not think he was going to go that high. I thought he would be in play for us at number 32. Ryan Wingo, wide receiver, Texas to the Steelers. The receivers are flying off the board quickly. I know a lot of you guys want to see us add a pass catcher early. Caleb Beasley, top corner off the board to the Colts. And the Vikings pick Luke Kromenhoek, quarterback out of Florida State. I am all in on Luke Kromenhoek becoming a good player at the next level. As a redshirt sophomore 2 years ago, he leads Florida State to the playoff, misses his junior year with an injury. Florida State, I think, finishes around 500. Comes back as a senior, and wouldn't you know it, leads Florida State to a playoff spot and win. He finished in third place for the Heisman Trophy. I think he's a gritty, tough quarterback who just finds ways to win games. Had Bo Nix struggled this year, Luke Kromenhoek would have been the guy who we had coveted. We probably wouldn't have been able to get him without a big trade-up, and obviously Bo Nix leading us to the Super Bowl meant that we didn't need to go after a quarterback. But if we did, it would have been Luke Kromenhoek. Coleman Vivian to the Buccaneers, a little bit undersized at the center position, but he is a machine. He is an 84 overall. Very good player. Marcus Deal, defensive tackle, TCU to the Packers. We saw him be a one-man wrecking crew up front for TCU in the playoff. He is a stud. Jordan Allen, Kansas State to the Jets, second in active sacks, only behind Dekias Brinkley. Tyree Adams, offensive tackle to the Jaguars, and now Cincinnati up at 19. We're looking to try to make a trade here, but these offers are ridiculous. Like Michael Williams? Absolutely not. The Bengals pick the 5th wide receiver off the board. It's Nick Marsh out of Michigan State. We're going to try at number 20. I don't think Andrew Thomas will be all that realistic given his age. I don't think Ashton Genty would be realistic given that he is an expiring running back. And the other deals see us trading multiple first-round picks. I do not think it's worth it. The Titans pick Robert Stafford, one of the most experienced players in this class, a 4-year starter at Miami. The player I would trade up for is still on the board, though. We'll look at Baltimore at number 21. Kind of the same deal. Aleem McNeil's making a lot of money. That would be a huge hit out of our salary cap. They select Brandon Baker, offensive tackle out of Texas. The guy I want is still there. The Giants at number 22. Again, none of these make sense. Why would they want Andrew Thomas back? What about just 1 and 2? Where does this go? And they almost accepted it. So clearly, the trades in the Trade Finder are just trying to rip us off. I think what we're going to do is we're going to wait a little bit. I think our guy is kind of slipping, and we can give up less than a 1 and a 2. I don't want to give up that second rounder if I don't have to. Isaiah Robinson, offensive tackle to the Giants. The Panthers select David Stone, the big defensive lineman out of Oklahoma. Our guy is still there. How is he on the board? Carl Williams Jr., good player. Corner out of Baylor, not our target. Winston Berglund, another really good player. Linebacker out of Purdue, not the target. I still think we would have to give up a second to move up. I'm looking at that 28 spot with Buffalo if he falls to give up some other picks. But unfortunately, the Lions chose him. It is, in fact, our good friend Damani Maxson out of the University of Kansas. 4-year starter with the Jayhawks, has played all over the field. Sub-linebacker, safety, slot corner, where I think he will be best at, especially with Terrion Arnold gone. Damani Maxson is an absolute stud. He checks off all the boxes that teams in the NFL are going to look for, and he is going to be very good right off the bat. Guess his rating, 87. And if you count the +2 temporary boost, he's an 89. What a pick by Detroit. I'm disappointed we didn't get him, but if anybody else picks him, selfishly, I am a little bit happy that it is the Lions. I'm going to get called a glazer for making him that good, aren't I? I mean, he kind of deserves it. He's been an All-American level player at 3 different positions. Wide receiver to the Raiders, Devin Hyatt, very good player. I'm a little surprised by the position. Brandon Jacobs, safety out of Maryland, goes in the first round to the Buffalo Bills. Des Ricks, corner to the Kansas City Chiefs, adding another young piece in the secondary. Jackson Pressey, wide receiver, Alabama. He's a guy who was heavily on my radar at number 32. He was the guy I kind of thought we were going to get going into the day. Then Maxson slipped. We obviously didn't get him, and we don't get Pressey either, as Seattle picks Curtis Perry at number 31. So we are on the board at 32. I'm a little disappointed we missed out on Maxson and Pressey. They were the top 2 guys for me. There are still a number of players I like, one of whom is projected to go in the middle of the second round. And, well, since he's the top player on my board, I feel like we can move back a little bit. No one says they want the pick, but I think someone like San Francisco could make sense at number 39. Try to add a third rounder. We don't currently have one. They say no, with a 1 and a 4 for a 2 and a 3 swap. So I'm thinking maybe we do like a future 5th or a future 7th. They say no. I take out the 7. They still say no. They're being stingy. I'm going to move over to Houston and offer the same thing. They say no, but we're getting close. 5 for the 7. No. Take out the 7. Maybe a future 7? No, but we're so close. And there we go. We make a deal. The defending champions move outside of the first round, trading down from number 32 to number 40. The Texans on the clock. They went offensive line to start, and they will select Rodney Laura, defensive tackle out of North Carolina. He's a 76. So that'll wrap up the first round. We had 4 quarterbacks, including Sam Onatulu, number 1 to the Browns, and Eli Holstein, number 2 to the Rams. Our top 2 targets went a few spots before us. Damani Maxson to the Lions, and Jackson Pressey, who I think is like an 80, 81. He's also ridiculously good. Ends up going to the Baltimore Ravens. So now we do have a little more overall flexibility. We went into the day with 1 day 2 pick. Now we have 3. We've got 2 2s, including 1 at pick number 40, along with a 3rd round pick. And there's a lot of guys projected to go in the first round who are still here, including Harris Sewell. Projected number 13, Kelton Smith at number 19. All of the running backs, including Caleb Jackson and Peyton Lewis. I mentioned running back as a possibility for us early in the past. So Sewell's fall comes to a close. The Browns now have 2 offensive linemen for their new quarterbacks. Hard to disagree with that. Dylan Gooden to the Rams, a talented but undersized pass rusher. Chamberlain Campbell, 6'7". He's tall and wiry, going to the Browns. Malik Bryant, you talk about production, one of the best football players in this class. He goes to the Commanders. Kelton Smith to the Falcons. He was a guy I would have definitely considered at number 40. Jarvis Lee to the Chargers at corner. And then the Niners do not pick Snipers. They picked a Missouri Tiger, so they definitely did not pick Snipers. So now with the 40th pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select Seth Jennings, edge rusher out of the University of Kansas. A Jayhawk is our first selection. Seth Jennings is headed to Denver. I didn't necessarily go into the draft planning on picking him, but with how the board played out, he's obviously a guy we're quite familiar with and a player who I strongly believe in to become a high-level player at the next level. I knew he was special from the first time I laid my eyes on him as a high school senior. It took him a little while to get going at Kansas, but as a junior, he had his best season. 15 TFLs, 7.5 sacks. It still feels like at times I'm pulling my hair out watching him because he never was as consistent of an edge rusher as I would have hoped. Despite that, though, he had more pressures this year. He had more finishes. He had his best season against the run. And his skill set is extremely translatable for the NFL level. He was built in a lab to be successful in the pros, and I think he'll be a better NFL player than he was in college. 6'4", 275, he is built like an ox. Incredible strength, has phenomenal power, kind of a one-trick pony. He doesn't necessarily have a lot of finesse to his game. It's more about him overpowering the offensive linemen, which he's going to have a harder time doing in the NFL because they're bigger and stronger. But he's gotten better each year at Kansas. This season, he's put on his best film yet, although he was non-existent in the playoff. 3 tackles, no for a loss, no sacks. Alabama, he did nothing in that game. So even though the Seth Jennings era had some good and some bad, and it was certainly a roller coaster, I'm willing to stay on the ride because I feel like the high-end play of Seth Jennings shows that we could be looking at a really high-ceiling pass rusher. 75 overall, hidden development. I don't think he's going to play a ton as a rookie because we are very deep in terms of our edge room. But that's fine. I don't think he's ready to be a regular contributor at the NFL level. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for guys who are going to be developable. We have our starters pretty much set for next year. We're not looking for contributors. We're looking for guys for the future. Caleb Jackson running back to the Saints. I guess they're going to move off of the Marion Hampton. Tank Hawkins to the Dolphins. Very fun pick. Marion Fortenberry to the Steelers. Really good player out of South Alabama. Peyton Lewis to the Colts. I guess Jonathan Taylor's getting older, so they want to plan for their future after him. Kenneth Merriweather, edge rusher, Iowa to the Vikings. Connor Litneski got all the love, but Merriweather has been a good starter for multiple seasons in a row. Jaron Hamilton caught the clinching touchdown in the national championship for Alabama. He goes to the Jets. The Jaguars have never been able to get consistent running back play in this series. They hope Yassine Willis from Syracuse will ultimately change that. We've had a couple tight ends off the board. Gavin Hoffman, tight end University to the Bucks. Dorian Thomas from Arizona to the Titans. We're around 10 picks away. We have our own pick at number 64. Another running back, Quintravion Wiesner to the Giants. Arch Manning to Carolina. Hello! Now, Arch Manning is only a 70 overall. His play at Texas really never hit what we had expected. We thought he was going to be a first-round pick going into last year. He stays in school. We thought he'd be a first-round pick this year, but he was disappointing. And I guess Carolina felt like they haven't gotten enough out of Bryce Young, and they want to develop somebody behind him. Just a few picks to go now. Elijah Rushing to Detroit. Taylor Pinto, running back, USC, staying in Southern California, going to the Chargers. J.R. Johnson, linebacker to the Chiefs. Mikel Mormon to the Cowboys. That's such a Dallas pick. I kind of thought they'd be the Arch Manning team, losing Dak Prescott. They have Haynes King projected to be the starter, who I think is going to be pretty good. But Mikel Mormon is such an obvious fit. Ball hawking corner, little inconsistent in coverage, but has a lot of shades of both Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland in his game. We're on the board at 64, and the players left are a lot more chalkier than the first round, interestingly enough. The highest projected player left is at number 53. Some interesting guys here at multiple positions, a lot of good receivers, a lot of good DBs. So who's it going to be? With the 64th pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select Earl Culp, cornerback out of Purdue. So we are going into the secondary, adding a defensive back with the 21-year-old redshirt junior Earl Culp, who I think has a chance, like Seth Jennings, to be really good, but probably in 2 or 3 years from now. But as I said, the strategy is not looking for starters right away. We do not need contributors for this year. We need high upside pieces for the future. I like Culp's skill set, good in man coverage, physical corner, good size and length at 6'1". I wish he was a little better in zone. I wish he offered a little bit more against the run. And I wish his ball skills were a little better. But at 21 years old, you can teach those things. What you cannot teach is 6'1", 200 pounds. I know it says 175, but he's grown since his freshman year. And what you certainly cannot teach is 4.3 flat speed. This kid has the burners. He can absolutely fly. 2-year starter at Purdue, up and down for sure. I thought he got better, though, this year as a junior. And as we look at the cornerback room, we might need a long-term starter sooner than later. Benjamin Morrison and Savon Revel are entering the final years of their deals. Patrick Surtain, the next time he's due for an extension, he will be in his 30s. Colin Wright, we're going to have to make a decision on as well. We might pay 1 or 2 of those guys, but not all of them. So Culp is a 73, as I expected, kind of raw. I don't think he's going to play a big role for us this year. He's the 184th ranked corner in the NFL right now. but I think with some development and fine-tuning, he can be a lot higher than 184. So that will wrap up the second round. We ultimately stay with our 2 picks, adding some developmental pieces on the defense with 2 of the youngest players in this draft, picking Seth Jennings out of Kansas, a 75 overall edge rusher, and Earl Culp out of Purdue, a 73 overall corner. Neither of those guys are the highest rated, probably towards the lower side of the second round. But again, I'm not too worried about it. I'm looking for multiple balls of clay who we can turn into starters in the future as some of the current guys on this team eventually fizzle away, whether they regress or leave because of contract. On to the third round, Landon Marceline to the Browns. He is really good, but he is made of glass. I think his injury rating is in the 60s. Back-to-back Arizona State players, Ramel Lewis Jr. to the Packers. Another corner, there's Curly Reed to the Chiefs. We're seeing some defensive backs off the board early. A few picks away. Remember, we had the 72nd pick in the trade we made earlier with the Texans. Tristan Jernigan to the Chargers. I thought about him at 64. I think he's the best pure cover linebacker in the draft, but I don't think he tested overly well. And then the Niners add another linebacker with Sergine Tuknara. So with the 72nd pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select Tyler Johnson, offensive tackle out of Auburn. So we are going to the trenches with Tyler Johnson, who's projected to go towards the late third, early fourth round. But we don't pick until the back end of the fourth. I wanted to make sure we could get this guy because I think he is going to be quite good pretty early on. As I said earlier, I think Caden Jones is the best pure pass protector in the draft. There's a reason why he went in the top 10. But I don't think Tyler Johnson is too far lower. A 2-year starter at left tackle. He's been one of the best offensive linemen, not just in the SEC, but in the country. The question with him is the medical. He missed 6 games this year. He missed 4 last year. So this is a guy who has not shown the ability to stay healthy. But much like Seth Jennings and Earl Culp, we don't need him to play right away. The idea here is that he would probably be the long-term replacement for Andrew Thomas if he develops. Thomas is, I think, 29 years old, so he's not getting any younger. Johnson has played well when on the field, but he hasn't shown he can stay on the field. So if we can improve his conditioning, that would certainly go a long way and potentially making him one of our starting offensive tackles for the future. And he comes in as a 76 overall. As I said, he's a good player. He's athletic. He's got some power to him. I'm surprised his pass protecting ratings are so low. I felt like that was his strength at Auburn, but I feel like that just kind of shows that he's really well-rounded and he can do a lot of different things on the line. So Tyler Johnson is the pick at number 72. We'll try to move through the third round a little bit quicker, given that we do not have a selection for the remainder of the round. The most notable pick in round 3, in my opinion, is LSU running back Caden Durham going to the Bucs. A running back, wide receiver hybrid. I thought about him at 72, but I just don't really know how he would use him. He's such a polarizing player. He's an 83 overall, but I wouldn't get so excited because he hasn't shown the ability to play running back at a high level, but he has some very good skills that could certainly be developed. The third Kansas Jayhawk is off the board. At pick 77, safety Taylor Davis to the Colts. I love that he was a top 100 pick. He has worked so hard. He went from a special teamer and a backup to a high-level starter and top 100 pick. Jordan Faison, the NCAA leader in receiving yards, goes to the Bills. Leave it to Seattle to pick a running back because, of course, they will. And then the Bears round out the third round with linebacker Samuel Mpemba, another Kansas player off the board. Would not show his rating here, but I believe he is around a 76, 77 overall. And Pemba's another guy who's gotten a lot better over his 3 years here after we got him in the transfer portal from the University of Georgia. I thought he played his best football in this year's playoffs, specifically in the Alabama game. And I think he's earned the opportunity to be a top 100 selection. So now that we are through the third round, it's certainly a lot harder to hit big on players here on day 3, but we are going to do our best. There's a guy I'm really eyeing up here in the fourth round. I think he is probably going to make it to 117. I don't know if I want to risk it, though. We might want to make a move. There are some really interesting players here, including Cortez Boyd and Miles Steele, two very young, very talented receivers who I would have thought would have been off the board. Miles Steele is basically a slower DK Metcalf. All he does in that Maryland offense is run go routes, but he does it effectively. And then Cortez Boyd, big, physical receiver, only 21 years old. I'm surprised he's on the board. David Ezeomome goes to the Browns to start the 4th round. Hasn't lived up to his freshman year, but a good player. Pick 100 is Aiden Brussel to the Commanders. Pick 101, meanwhile, is on the move to the Broncos. I know I said I think he's going to make it to 117, but I am not risking it. I'm willing to give up a future 5th if it means we can go up and get our guy, because he's one of one. There's nobody else like him, so I wanted to make sure we're able to land him. With the 101st pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select Samu Taumanpepe, defensive tackle out of Texas A&M. So it's not one of the receivers. Cortez Boyd and Miles Steele were both tempting, but we're going to go with the big fella. 6'2", 380 pounds. Samu Taumanpepe is the biggest player in the draft, and he is the choice to the Broncos. He really did not have a big role for this Texas A&M team until his final year, where I thought he was quite solid. Going into his evaluation, I kind of thought he would just be a run-stuffing nose tackle who clogs the lane, but he's got a little wiggle to him. He showed some flashes as a pass rusher. He had 4.5 sacks. He finished with over 30 tackles, which for a nose tackle in 12 games is honestly pretty good. And, of course, he is a physical outlier, and I want to take a chance on his build because there isn't really anybody else in the NFL who is like him. And I think the upside he showed as a pass rusher this year suggests that he can be a little bit more than somebody who's just in the middle of the defensive line clogging rushing lanes, which is valuable in and of itself. But I think we can get a little more out of him. I also think, get ready for this, you're going to need to bear with me here, I think we can get some use out of him on the offensive side of the ball. I think he could play fullback for us, as he's a 73 with normal development. I know Rivaldo Fairweather has done a good job for us as the fullback, revitalizing the position. But who is tackling a 380-pound behemoth of a human being on the goal line? No one. No one's tackling him. So I kind of think he could potentially get some snaps offensively. That's why I wanted to make sure we could get him, because there's nobody like him in this draft class at all. Interestingly, though, assuming we do not make another move into the 4th round, we've not picked a running back yet. I mentioned in the running back prospect profile we could look to do that earlier. Miles Steele to New Orleans. That is a good pick. 20 years old, was on the short list for the Heisman Trophy. The problem is he doesn't have a route tree, because all he did in Maryland was to go deep, and to their credit, it worked. The Cardinals take a gamble with Sammy Brown, a gamble that will pay off. 78 overall, despite not playing last year. Moving a little bit farther into the 4th round, some notable picks include a number of the quarterbacks. Devon Williams to the Colts. Ryan Staub of Colorado to the Titans. We got to play against him. I think he's really good. James Livingston off the board to Detroit. I will be preying on your downfall. Davi Belfort to the Raiders, a 3rd quarterback here in the 4th. One of the best picks here, in my opinion, is Florida running back KD Daniels to the Panthers. I really like his ceiling. He's a guy I thought about with some of our picks. As I kind of talked about earlier, we have not picked a running back yet. We are showing some faith in Ashton Jeanty and Trevion Henderson, not just for this year, but beyond, as two players who we could potentially look to extend, with them both being free agents after next year. So that will wrap up the 4th round. A team who I think needs to get a lot of love with how they've drafted is Cleveland. I know I didn't really agree with what they did at number 1, but I think they've handled things well. They've done a terrific job building the offensive line. They drafted Wilkin Formby, the tackle out of Alabama here in the 4th. He's a 78. So that's now 3 offensive linemen for the Browns. They have really overhauled up front, which that's what you got to do. You got to get the big boys to protect the quarterback, so I like that that's been their priority. Into the 5th round, speaking of the Browns, they are on the board. Some surprising players still left on the clock, and someone is going to try to take advantage. There's another guy who I really want. Going into day 3, there were 2 players I really wanted. Samu Taumanpepe was one of them. We traded up for him. The second of whom I don't think is going to fall much farther, so we're going to trade up for him as well. Savon Revel and pick 183 to the Browns for a 5th and a future 5th. So Savon Revel is on the move. A former 3rd round pick who just never really put it together here. I don't know why. We certainly gave him a chance. He played quite a bit over the last 3 years, but he just was not very good. Cleveland's going to take a chance on him. If nothing else, it's a depth piece for them. Well, we move up into the 5th. With the 129th pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select wide receiver Mario Maddox out of the University of Kansas. So it is a pass catcher, but it is not Cortez Boyd. Although I thought about him strongly. I really do not think he should still be on the board here. But instead, it is Maddox. Much like Seth Jennings, another guy who we recruited. Much like Seth Jennings, it was an up and down ride for Maddox. He came in as a JUCO guy. We redshirted him his junior year. Then his redshirt junior year, he was a starter where he played quite well until getting injured. Missed most of his senior season, but was healthy over the last 5 games and played really well in that stretch. He looked like an NFL receiver. Primarily operating from the slot, Maddox is a guy who really can get open from anywhere on the field. He's got game-breaking speed and can get open deep, but he's got the short area quickness to be able to battle with corners in the slot. He has a good catch radius. He's got good hands. As I mentioned, he's a good route runner. Some of his route running ratings, at least in EA college football, are kind of all over the place. 99 deep route, not a surprise. As I said, he can stretch the field. 67 short route, I feel like he has severely outplayed that, though. He is a tried and true slot receiver, and he knows how to get open from anywhere on the field. He's a weapon with the ball in his hands. It's just that he's undersized. He's only 5'8", 200 pounds, and we haven't really seen him pull it together for a full season. His only real full year as a starter was in 2026. This year, he only played 5 games, but he was really good in all 5 of those games of at least 50 yards in each of them, including 2 touchdowns in the college football playoff. Hidden development for Maddox. Now, he is a little bit on the older side. He will turn 24 years old early as a rookie, but I think he's going to be a good player at the next level. He's a 76 overall. This pick is very similar to us picking Tez Johnson back in year number 1. 23-year-old, undersized, slot receiver, hidden development. I think Tez Johnson was a 77, so right in the same ratings range. And I think picking Maddox could suggest that Tez Johnson might be on his way out. I hate to even think about that, given the relationship with him and Bo Nix, but Tez Johnson was taken out of all 4 playoff games due to injury. That's like impressive more than anything else, but that's also a problem. So we could use a long-term slot receiver if Tez Johnson does not stick around, and I think that could be Mario Maddox. So with that, we have 2 more picks, one in the 6th, one in the 7th. I don't really see us trading up because we've already done it twice here on day 3. Coy Beasley to New England. There have been so many Purdue defensive players to get drafted over the last 2 years. I mean, last year we had Dylan Thieneman and CJ Madden go in the top 10. This year we saw Derek Rogers go in the 2nd round. Earl Culp we picked in the 2nd round, and now Beasley here in round 5 to New England. Keon Keeley to the Texans. He is the player who injured Clyde Poole, so we don't like him. Camden Beebe to the Dolphins. I thought he would end up on Dallas. We saw a bunch of siblings reunite last year. I guess that's not the case this year. No brotherly love in the 2028 NFL Draft. In terms of my favorite picks in the 5th round, I like Bryson Washington to the Giants. I think he could be a long-term starter at running back. Marquise Lightfoot, dynamic, athletic edge rusher out of Miami to Seattle. And the Niners wrap it up with Joshua Bates. So we move up here into the top of the 5th round to pick Mario Maddox, 76 overall. He is tied with Tyler Johnson for our highest-rated player so far. I don't know how often he's going to see the field unless Tez Johnson were to theoretically be traded, which I don't really want to do. If Tez Johnson sticks around, Maddox at best will be the wide receiver 5, but we will have him developing in the wings, and with guys like Tez Johnson, Chris Brazzell, eventually Ryan Williams, all needing contracts in the near future, we're not going to be able to pay all of them, and Maddox would certainly be able to slide in and replace one of them. Cortez Boyd, though, is still on the board here in the 6th round. I don't get it at all. Does he know Benjamin Morrison's dealer or something? Cortez Boyd going into the year was projected as a 1st-round pick after a phenomenal true sophomore season at Ole Miss. He was a little disappointing as a junior, but I didn't think he was disappointing enough to make it out of the second round, let alone the sixth. But finally he goes to New Orleans, the same team who drafted Miles Steele in the fourth. I don't really know how that's going to entirely work. I get they're both different receivers. Boyd is more of your jump ball, physical X receiver. Miles Steele is the Z, the guy who can stretch the field. I'm curious to see how those two fit. And I'm kind of relieved that Boyd is off the board. It would have been irresponsible for us to pick him. I would have really thought about it here, though, but it's probably for the better. So with the 172nd pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select Landon Thomas, tight end, out of Florida State University. I felt like we could use some more tight end depth. Currently, all we have on the roster is Harold Fannin, who's 2 years away from needing an extension, and then Rivaldo Fairweather, who is 1 year away from needing an extension, and also isn't technically even a tight end, given that he played a lot at fullback. Landon Thomas, I think, has a high floor. What you see is what you get. 3-year starter with the Seminoles, very similar numbers in each of the 3 seasons he played. I don't think you're looking at some gem like we got with Harold Fannin in the 3rd round a couple years ago, but I think he's a good player. I think in terms of the tight ends left, he tested by far the best at the combine. The other tight end I looked at was Lafayette Kayue out of TCU. He had played well against us in the past, but I think Thomas here is a better tester, and I think his production is right on line with many of the other tight ends in this range. A well-rounded route runner, good hands, good athlete. He's a jack of all trades, master of none. He doesn't really have many major weaknesses, and because of that, I think he's going to stick around in the league for a while, even if he's never like some great starter. This is more of a depth pick than anything else. We've been looking for future starters throughout the draft. This pick, though, is for some depth. Got another guy in the tight end room because we only have 1.5. Fairweather gets a half. Now, unfortunately, Thomas's ratings are not all that high. He ends up only being a 69 overall. Nice, but not really. Nonetheless, he'll be fine as our number 3 tight end, or I guess number 2.5. You get the point. So with that, we have one more pick in the 7th round. I think we're going to ultimately keep this pick. I don't really see a reason to certainly not move up, but I don't think we're going to trade down either. In terms of other notable picks, Ashton Kozart, the wide receiver from SMU, he's slipped a lot as well. We didn't talk about him, though, because of Cortez Boyd. He ends up going to the Cardinals. Again, I'm relieved he was picked before us, so I could not tempt myself. A player I had looked at 172 was Damian Wimberly, the edge rusher out of UTSA. Good size, good production. He ends up going to the Browns. Lafayette Kayue, the TCU tight end, I mentioned him earlier. He ends up going to the Lions. The Seahawks pick another running back, Jarvis Green, because of course they do. And then Manny Covey, the Cincinnati running back, goes to the Steelers. So that wraps up round 6. Some good players selected here. UAB receiver Iverson Hooks is a 77. Washington significantly overhauling the receiving room after picking Perry Thompson 4th overall. Cortez Boyd is a 74 overall with hidden development. I really do not know why he slipped. 21 years old with a dev trait. He's going to be a good player. He should have gone in the 2nd round where he was always projected. I don't know what the NFL teams missed on him. Had he kept falling, I would have picked him in the 7th round. Maybe we should have picked him earlier when we had the chance, but Chris Brazzell is a very, very similar player, so it would be an extremely redundant fit. Our final pick of the day is at 213. Trying to figure out where we go to finish things off. In terms of notable picks in the 7th round, Ellis Robinson, the corner out of Boston College. Him and Jeremiah Smith were battling to be the number 1 recruit in 2024. The Robinsons played for a few different schools, still projected to be a top 100 pick in this draft, and then ended up slipping all the way to the 7th. So here we are with our final pick of the day. With the 213th pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select Hunter Osborne, edge rusher out of the University of Alabama. So we start our draft with a jumbo, oversized edge rusher, and we end the draft with a jumbo, oversized edge. I think Hunter Osborne is more than interior defensive lineman. That is where he primarily played at Alabama, and I think that's where he will play at the next level. The best game of his career was in the college football playoff semifinal against Kansas, where he had 2 sacks. I wasn't overly familiar with him before this game, but I was really impressed watching him, and he ended up coming on my radar. Osborne is an interesting case because his career started off really well. And after his sophomore season, it looked like at the very least, he would be a top 100 pick. He didn't really give Alabama anything as a junior and was not all that impressive this year as a senior outside of his terrific game against Kansas. But you look at the size, you look at the measurables, really impressive athleticism for a guy who's essentially 300 pounds, and you look at the production, especially as a freshman in the SEC. Even though he's kind of gotten worse as his career has gone along. I mean, he had 7 sacks as a freshman. He was one of the better defensive linemen in the SEC as a sophomore. But with Curtis Perry coming in from Wake Forest in the transfer portal, Osborne, his role took a hit. It worked out for Alabama. Curtis Perry ended up going in the first round, of course. Osborne was a no-show in the national championship win over TCU. Despite Curtis Perry taking his role with the Crimson Tide, Osborne actually has a higher rating. He's a 73. Perry's a 72. Take that, Seattle. For the 7th round, this is a pretty good pick. We're getting a guy who I think can potentially be a rotational pass rusher. Again, we're not going to need him to right away because we are super crowded on the defensive line. But a guy who could potentially play a role for us down the stretch. And if that's what you're getting with the 213th pick, then I feel like you will gladly take that. In terms of the final picks of the draft, Kanye Clark to the Panthers. The Eagles pick Cameron Howard, the safety out of the University of Alabama. Now just a couple picks left. Seattle at 231 gets Lucas Simmons, left tackle, Florida State. And now the Panthers on the clock at 224. Who will be Mr. Irrelevant? Cole Adams, I am really surprised he has not been picked yet. I thought he absolutely should have gone earlier, the talented receiver out of Alabama. They will pick a different skill position player. It's Kamari Moulton, the running back out of Iowa, who I was very impressed with in their Rose Bowl loss against Michigan. I thought he was really good. So that will wrap up the 7th round. We stick and pick, ultimately landing Hunter Osborne, part of the reigning champion Alabama Crimson Tide, adding to the depth on the defensive line. So there is your draft. I think we did a pretty good job. We went into this draft with a clear plan, not necessarily looking for immediate contributors, but guys who can start down the line. Seth Jennings and Earl Culp are both only 21 years old. They both have very high ceilings, in my opinion, to be very good in the future. Tyler Johnson, Mario Maddox, both have hit in development, both 76 overalls. Both will be good enough to play fairly soon. And then Samu Tamuampepe, the wild card of this year's draft. I really do not know exactly how we're going to use him, but I'll figure out a way. He's 380 pounds. Let's take a look at the schedule and briefly talk about what the format of next year's episodes will look like. We are going to start the year, of course, as the defending champions on Thursday night, at home against a team who we beat in the playoffs in our building, Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. I thought they would give us Seattle in Week 1. We do play against Seattle at home. We will play them Week 6, 4:15 on, I guess, CBS, instead of a primetime game. So we get the Chiefs Week 1. But then look at this. We play against the Chiefs again on Sunday night in Week 3. That is an awfully quick turnaround for the same two teams to be playing on primetime. After that, we don't play on primetime again until Week 10. Sunday night against the Titans. I am very excited to play against Tennessee. We have not played against them yet with this current group with Alex Orji at quarterback. Monday night, Week 12 against the Colts. We've had some battles against them in the past. Sunday night against the Ravens, Monday night against the Bills. Lamar and Josh Allen, two great matchups towards the end of the year. And then we wrap things up against the Chargers with a Week 14 bye week. I am a fan of the late bye, so I think that works out quite well for us. As for what the format of the episodes is going to look like, obviously this was an abbreviated offseason, and the regular season will be abbreviated as well. I think the plan is we will go through roughly 4 games per episode. We're going to try to get through the regular season in 4 episodes, make it to the playoffs, and then hopefully at that point we will be in the playoffs, and I'll figure out how we will format that. Hope you guys enjoyed. I know it was a long one. It was longer than I would have hoped, but we had a lot to go over, so not complaining. Make sure to leave a like. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new. Broncos country, let ride.